25 to 5 on a Friday afternoon, and you know what that means. It's time to talk about money, and joining us to do exactly that from Envision Financial, Luke Smith. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, how are we?
Super good for a Friday afternoon. It's looking lovely outside. It's sunny and relatively blue skies, bit of cloud about, but I'll tell you what, I went for a walk before. The air is rather fresh today.
I've got the jumper on today, I'll tell you, it is icy. I think it was actually warmer this morning at 7:30 than it is now out there. So,
well, it might have seemed that way, but apparently it's actually 10 degrees right now outside.
The thermometer must be in the toilet then because...
Yes, I can tell you though, when I went for the walk, if the cloud came across the sun, it was instantly chill factor because the air is very cold. But when the cloud moved away from the sun, you got some of that radiant heat, and the sunshine was still quite nice. You just had to make sure you were in a sunny spot. And everything was lovely. Speaking about everything being lovely, what can we do with our superannuation to make it all the more lovely? Today we're talking about sharing your super with your spouse, what you can do, what you can't do. How does this work?
Yeah, so what we're referring to here is the super splitting legislation. And I think where you've married well, it is one of the most underutilised strategies that people don't even realise you can do. And it allows people to move a certain type of contribution, which is money going into super. It allows you to move the benefit that comes into your fund into your spouse's name. And people say, well, why would it do that? The primary benefit or strategy that people should consider here is that you can split 85% of your deductible contributions. Now, as we know, you can put money in under different thresholds. $27,500 is the most you can put into super that comes from your employer or yourself and claim a tax deduction. So that would include things like salary sacrifice. That would include superannuation guarantee payments and any deductible payment where you've made a personal deductible contribution where you've claimed a tax deduction. So those types of contributions can be split to a spouse each year. Now, why would you do that? When you think about accessing retirement, a lot of people come into my office and say, well, I'm going to be 60 and my wife's going to be 55 and we're going to retire and buy a caravan and drive around the country.
Yeah.
Great. But if your wife's 55 and her preservation age is 60, there's 5 years that she can't access her super. So in that example where you have a 5-year age difference, why not start moving the super into the older person's name so that you can get access to it 5 years sooner? And that is really what the super splitting legislation allows you to try and achieve. There are other superannuation equalisation reasons. Say if you've got somebody that's had a baby and come back into the workforce and you want to add to their super, another great way to split it. So going to the older person's name is not the only reason, but I find from a strategy standpoint, a lot of couples want to be able to travel and do things when the older person gets to retirement age and can access super on a tax-free basis. So why not get the younger person's super into their name over their working life and be progressive and think with the end in mind so that you can actually get hold of tax-free money much sooner than rather waiting 5 years in that example.
I suppose this all does hinge on the idea that you're pretty confident you're not going to split up.
Well, look, and as any good family lawyer would say, I'll get it back. And generally speaking, that's exactly what would happen. They would flag superannuation, it would be returned to the individual's account, and it's something that the family law system would address. So not the first time somebody's asked me that, and I'm sure it won't be the last. But it is again, it's going into something with the eyes wide open and understanding that the legislation is there to protect you as an individual.
Yeah, it is funny because obviously I've heard anecdotally that people get to retirement and all of a sudden they're both at home together and spending more time in each other's company than they have done in years, and suddenly discover they don't really get along anymore.
Yeah, look, and if that's you, then don't split your super to the older person's name and keep the younger spouse working for the next 5 years. And, you know, if you happen to be older and want to go fishing and playing golf with the lads, then, you know, unfortunately you forgot to super split 5 years prior to retirement. So, you know, if you're in that boat, then you can, you know, change stations and listen to some songs. But, you know, if you're looking to try and get money into the older person's name, great strategy and really something that you need to be progressively doing because this strategy is non-cumulative. So if you don't do it each year, you can't go back and split previous years if you haven't done it.
Oh, okay.
So really important. This is non-cumulative. But one of the rules say that you can only super split after the end of the financial year. And that makes a lot of sense because if you consider that you make contributions before 30 June, You notify the fund whether you're going to claim a tax deduction or not, and then the tax return of the respective super fund you're in is completed. So you can only submit super splitting paperwork from July onwards for the financial year that's just finished. So we're talking about it now to be thinking in advance, hey, should I get some extra contributions into the younger person's name? They can still maximise their tax deductions, they can still lower their taxable income, they can still build up superannuation. Then in July, you may be able to split over to the older person's name and bring forward your access time frame, which is vital.
So that window of opportunity opens up on the 1st of July, but I assume there's a time limit you must get it done by?
No. So
okay.
here's an opportunity. You could ring your fund now and say, hey, Mr. Fund, give me the super splitting paperwork for my fund. And provided your fund allows it, need to check, it's not mandatory, you could write to your ABC Super Fund today and say, hey, can I split 85% of my contributions or any amount that you've put in? So you don't have to split 85, that's just the maximum, because our friends at the ATO want their 15%.
Yes.
You could say, I've put 27,000 in, I'd like to split 10,000 to my wife. You don't have to split it all, you can choose, but the maximum is 85. You could do that now for your contributions in the last financial year.
Mm-hmm.
So talking about doing it leading into 30 June and getting contributions in, yes, we can't do this financial year till July, but you could look back and go, well, this strategy is really good. I could do this because I've married really well and there's 3, 4, 5 years difference. You could split last year's contributions now and this year's contributions in July and really start to ramp up 2 years very quickly.
So where you've got me though is where it says you cannot split contributions in a previous year. So I presume you've got 12 months from the 1st of July.
Correct. So you can't go and say, hey, I'd like to super split my contributions in the 18-19 financial year.
No.
Which is different to the bring forward concession rules, which let you go back and do that. So you just need to make sure.
Now you're deliberately trying to confuse me.
It is Friday afternoon. So each financial year, you've got to do it from July onwards. In the following financial year, it's non-cumulative. So if you've married and there's a couple of years difference, I had one this week where there was 18 months difference, but they were very, very cognizant of the timing of when they wanted to do things.
Yeah.
And 18 months was effectively a lifetime between, the time they were able to take super and when they wanted to do their things. And it worked out that the timing of their retirement hinged on getting a certain amount of money out. And this was a great way to be able to do that.
All right. So how do you go about doing it?
Well, you need to check that your fund allows it first. So check with your fund because it's not mandatory. It is very, very common and it is in 99% of funds. If you're in a defined benefit scheme, don't get too upset because you just can't do it. Okay, so you've got to be in a standard accumulation fund. Check with the fund, get their paperwork and notify them of, yes, I'm going to split my money. How much do I want to split and where do I want to split it? You send that into the fund. They will then process it and make the contribution into the super fund that they have been provided. We need to keep in mind here that you need to elect how much you're going to split, and you need to also make sure that you understand the balance of your account, because you will split 85%, and if you're going to move money and do something prior in the year, like pay premiums and other expenses, you need to make sure your paperwork is done in an orderly fashion. And you can't split to somebody that has reached their preservation age and is accessing their benefits. So both of you need to be gainfully employed and have not met a condition of release, which means you've retired at some point. Okay, so it's a very good one. Think about it as a general rule. Up to age 60, let's go hell for leather and get the younger person's super in the older person's name, because it's also a great way to pay off a residual mortgage. It's a great way to access money to make super contributions to lower your taxable income. You may be able to use the bring forward deductible limits that we spoke about before, or it could be great for paying off that beach house that you're going to move to when you hit a certain age and retire. So there are a number of access benefits that you need to think about tying into your why and making the most of it. But this is very, very underutilised and a great way to align your retirement dates where there's an age difference between a couple.
Okay, so what are the things to consider? Oh, hang on, where am I? I've lost my place. Here we go. What are the things people need to consider when you're splitting your super?
I'd check it's available. Make sure you're maximising your deductions. Make sure that you're getting in as much as you can for your personal tax profile each financial year. And then remember that this is non-cumulative. make sure you're doing it each year and taking advantage of the opportunity that's available every 12 months. Because if you forget to do it, you can't go back more than 1 year and split. So stay on top of it and make sure you're doing it. And then think about your why. Why would I want more money in the older person's name? Is it to align retirement? Is it to allow the younger person to work on a part-time basis? Because if you can do this over a number of years, you can actually accrue a significant amount of money that may allow the older person to retire and the younger person to say, well, you've effectively got $100,000 of my money that's accumulated over the last 5 or 10 years.
Yeah.
I'm going to go down to 2 or 3 days a week, and the money that's in the older person's name now can supplement the loss of wages for lifestyle. So align it with your why and have a clear and defined objective, and then execute it every year religiously, because it's a wonderful piece of legislation.
Yeah, and one of the things you mentioned, of course, is that you might be in a situation where you would like to have a sum of money in order to pay off and finalise a mortgage. And I think a lot of people are actually confronting that reality when they're looking at retirement, aren't they? They've been paying off this mortgage, but it's not quite paid off yet.
100%. And again, a great way to get twice as much money into one person's name. And if you think about the power of that, if we know that taking money out of super is tax-free over 60, you can really make some indentations on a mortgage when you think the alternative is paying it off after you've paid 39% tax. If you maximise your contributions to super at 15% and then pull the money out tax-free at 60, you've effectively paid a large portion of your home loan off at a maximum tax rate of 15%. So don't just think I'm tying up my money in super. Another way of looking at it is I'm paying off my house in a very tax-effective manner, because my attitude towards the strategy is far superior to what you could call amateur hour thinking of, oh, I'm just committing my money to super. Well, no, you're committing your money to super at a tax-effective rate that at 60, which depending on your age, may not be far away, you can pull out and clear the debt on your house with. Happy days.
Yeah, well, that's always a good news story, isn't it?
Well, it's always about thinking again, what's my why and what are the strategies that are available to me, and can I make the most of them over the years? Because everybody loves a tax saving. Everybody loves accessing money sooner rather than later, and paying off a home loan or being able to live on tax-free money at 60, absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, okay, so the basic points to remember, I guess, would be to remember that limit. You cannot split more than 85% of your deductible contributions. You cannot split contributions that were made prior to the last financial year.
Correct. Yep.
But you can't go back. Yep. But you can't do it in the current financial year. It's got to be in the financial year that's just finished.
That's right. So you can only ever go back the 12 months you were just in.
Yeah.
You can't go back to 2018 and do it, because you just don't have that window.
Check with your fund whether it is allowed or not allowed, because some funds don't allow it.
Correct.
But if they do, you then also got to make sure you've got the right paperwork and fill it out correctly.
Spot on. That's exactly right. The fund can be very meticulous about doing this, so you need to make sure that you've got it in, got it lodged, and they're across it.
Okay, and a couple of other caveats there. You can't split it to somebody who has already met a condition of release, or in other words, they've previously retired, even if they've unretired and gone back to work again.
Yes, I'm going to say yes. Don't hold me to that one, but on a Friday arvo, I'm going to say yes, because the theory would be true that you can't just roll it and then take it out the next day.
Okay. Well, there's a lot to remember there. We'll take a quick break and we'll come back and summarise it all in just a moment. It's about 12 minutes to 5 on 2CC. Well, it's about 8 minutes to 5. It's a Friday afternoon, and with me in the studio is Luke Smith from Envision Financial. Today we're talking about super splitting. Now, it sounds quite complicated, but at the end of the day, it's pretty simple and straightforward. You just got to make sure you dot your I's and cross your T's and get everything lined up. All your ducks in a row, as they say.
Yeah, look, exactly right. Exactly right. Or as someone said once, if you're early, you're never late. So just get it in. But it's really, you need to consider, is it available in my fund? And can I use it? That's obviously important. If you're not in it, then you sort of question what sort of fund you're in. Unless there is a fundamental fund, like rule issue, like a defined benefit that just doesn't allow that type of splitting because of the nature of the calculation of your benefit. So I'm not saying they're bad, but just make sure that it's appropriate.
It's a different set of rules.
Correct, exactly right. Get the paperwork in. consider it in conjunction with the bring forward rules. So this can be really powerful. So let's say you haven't made a contribution to super up to your caps in previous years, and this year you could throw $60,000 into super. So if you can get a $60,000 tax deduction in your name this year, and then split it to the older spouse in July, you're really starting to leverage up what's available for you down the road when either of you retire, primarily the older person.
Yeah.
So great example there is, take Bill's 56 and Jenny's 51, so there's 4 years difference. You put $27,500 a year in for Jenny. Jenny can then split $23,000 into Bill's superannuation each year. That would effectively provide 5 years of contributions. Let's say Bill quits at 61. There's 115,000 plus growth that Jenny would be able to access out of Bill's super at 61 that could cover 1 to 2 years of lost earnings and bring forward Jenny's actual retirement date much sooner than she realised.
Yeah, he's 61, but she's still 56.
Correct. So she'd still have 4 years before she could get her superannuation. But if she's thought ahead and just split the maximum contribution, she's made the most of her tax position because she's reached the concessional cap of 27,500. She can then split 23,375 in that scenario, and she could do that for 5 years. There's 115,000 roughly that will be in Bill's super at 61 that could fund Jenny saying to work, thank you ladies and gentlemen, I'm out, and they can go off and travel the country and fly around the world and try and get COVID somewhere else, just to see if it's different overseas.
You're such an optimist.
Well, I think you've got to be in the current environment, right? There's not a lot going for us at the moment, so yeah.
All right, very quickly, the key things to remember.
Yeah, check your fund allows it, complete the necessary paperwork, use it in conjunction with other strategies like the bring forward concessional rules. Remember, you can only split 85% of your deductible contributions. That includes salary sacrifice, personal deductible contributions, and things you get from your employer under superannuation guarantee. And you cannot split to somebody that's already retired. And more importantly, this is non-cumulative. So do it each year or you miss out. It is one of those use it or lose it scenarios.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
think ahead.
So do it each year, but remember, when you do it this July, you're doing it for the financial year that's just finished. So
Correct.
in that respect, it is kind of looking back, but you've only got the last 12 months.
Spot on, that's exactly right. So if you want to do it now for last year and really leverage this leading into the 30th of June.
And that's the thing, of course, at this time of the year, here we are in May, you
Mm.
need to be thinking about this now so you know what to do when the calendar clicks over to the 1st
And
of
this
July.
is exactly why I thought talking about it now is great, because people should be thinking about active contributions before June, and then this is really stacking the strategies on top of each other so that you can maximise them in July.
All right, Luke, so where can listeners get more information?
Yeah, so look, if you're unsure, 62604749. We've got envisionfinancial.com.au. We've got the podcast, The Strategy Stack, and Luke Talks Money on iTunes and Spotify. We've got the YouTube channel, Envision Financial Canberra, and we've just finished the final edit of the book. So we'll have the book out later this year, and you'll have something to stick on a coffee table at home because you're sick of watching YouTube on the phone. You can actually sit and have a read and highlight some strategies later in the year. So that's on the cusp of being finished, and we'll bring that out when it's ready to roll.
Fantastic. Thanks very much for popping by, and we'll catch up with you again next Friday.
See you next Friday.
Luke Smith from Envision Financial back in the studio once again at the same time next Friday afternoon, right here on 2CC. It's 3 minutes to 5, and all the very latest news is next.